Now we can do this without having, like, too much dramatic garbage going on. Welcome. We're back after a couple of moments. We're back after just a couple hours off, because I am still in vent mode. This ain't slowing down. And it ain't even, like, a trans thing anymore. Like, goodness gracious. The trans stuff doesn't make me nearly as annoyed. The stuff that happened this morning doesn't make me as annoyed as this. Like, there was some stuff I was complaining about earlier this morning. Was the DEI stuff and the trans stuff. And that irritates me, but it wasn't like, oh no, we need to immediately end everything, because it was never going to be anything. It was garbage. It was the sort of garbage that's going to just generate a bunch of lawsuits, and then nothing's going to happen. But whilst I was doing my little thing, doing my little rant, I did not get immediate news of a thing. And I stepped back and I took a little nap and I started working on the stuff I need to work on, which ain't getting done. There's no way in hell I'm doing this today. Some things hit the ground running. There has been a total freeze of grants from the federal government in the USA. The amount that the government quoted is about $10 trillion, and they go, oh, that's horrible. It's $10 trillion, including everything appropriated by Congress. I want to give you a moment to settle in here. What I just said. The money that Congress appropriated out of your tax dollars, out of my tax dollars, to be used for grants is gone. Frozen. To check on lining up with federal bits. That includes cancer research. That includes HIV medications. That includes WIC. You understand that? I let me say that again for people in the audience who may not understand what that means. WIC. Women, Infant, and Children. A program that provides vouchers for particular foodstuffs to make sure that pregnant women and newborn children can eat healthily. Even if mama ain't rich. That program has stopped. My ex-wife and I, we got WIC vouchers when our kids were born. This isn't like, oh, good, get a pile of fried chicken. This is a pound of beans. This is a jug of milk. This is some vegetables. This is, stuff to feed good, healthy food. That's frozen. Medicaid was supposed to be unaffected. We're already getting reports up out of the cities that they're not getting Medicaid payments processed. My best guess is it's because the NIH probably just uses one system for everything, and they had to turn it off. The NIH has money appropriated by Congress for its grants. The President of the United States is not a dictator. Never has been. Even at the worst that they've been before, even in the Bush administration, even in the Reagan administration, even at the most horrific parts of Trump 1 and Biden, the president has never been a dictator. Has always been reliant upon Congress to enable him. George Bush was not able to go around the world doing his war crimes on a whim. Congress had to appropriate funds and allow it. Ronald Reagan was not able to go around preaching lies about HIV and letting it murder and enabling it to kill millions of American citizens on his own. Congress had to back it. Joseph Biden was not able to shove a bunch of kids in cages on his own. The government, the Congress, had to abide it. This is something very new here. And I know people are talking lawsuits and all of that, but there's an immediate piece of action that the Congress of these United States can carry out. I was reading an article earlier where Don Bacon, my former representative when I lived in Nebraska, guy I've met, used to go to the same church. He said, I think we went to the same church. I could be wrong about it, but I'm pretty sure we went to the same church. He was saying, stated as a moderate, he was saying that he hoped that this whole thing would calm down because the president doesn't have the power of the purse. The Congress does. But I think I hope it's clear now, only a week or so into this presidency, that everything he was saying on the campaign trail that people were waving their hands at is completely true. He does not intend to respect Congress. He does not intend to respect the power of the purse. He does not intend to respect appropriations. He and his lackeys are parroting around the Constitution of the U.S. like it's a corpse on a stick. And it ain't something worth tolerating. You know, the gender executive order, you know, that sucked, but it was almost more funny than serious. The ones about the freeze on passports and refusing to align gender to passport properly, you know. Serious? Yes. Actual problem? Yes. Not cool? Yes. But you know what? It was most of my life that you couldn't get a passport in your true gender. So, like, chill. Like, it's fine. Like, I still can't even update my birth certificate properly. What's it matter? It's cool. It's fine. Limits places I can go in some times, but it's not that big of a deal. The DEI initiative thing on its own, mostly funny. Haha. Like, we see what it means. It's worrisome. It's troublesome. But be frank. It's hallucinating a problem that doesn't exist. It's not going to be, it shouldn't be a big deal. But this is a big deal. This is not like this is going the immigration thing was a big deal. And it enraged me that I didn't see a lot of Democrats who should be on the side of their citizens going off against it. But that wasn't like quite at the point where this is. This is at the point where if this ain't rolled back in the next couple of days, and you are a sitting member of the House of Representatives and you ain't signed on a motion to impeach and remove the president immediately, you are not doing your job. This ain't like even the last couple times that he was impeached. It was impeach but don't remove. Yell at him. Let him know this ain't appropriate. This is beyond that. This is the man who has made it clear for the entire campaign that he intends to reign as king. Democrats have been saying that our Constitution's at stake. We know they ain't believed it. We know they're just parroting words to try to win an election. But our government is at stake. And what we're seeing today is exactly that. What we're seeing today with the freeze on the National Institute of Health, with the freeze on WIC, with the freeze on education payments. Pell Grants are still going through. Hooray! That's good. But the fact that we didn't know until then, the fact that other areas where Congress has mandated funds, set funds aside, and issued a requirement for the executive branch to act, are getting shut down unilaterally. Nah, that ain't right. This ain't Donald Trump's doing things I disapprove of politically. This is Donald Trump is not respecting the constitutional power of Congress to determine where funds are spent. This is Donald Trump not following appropriations requirements. And, benefit of the doubt, maybe he rolls everything back and goes, whoops, sorry. The suicide hotlines are down. So that is people who are going to be killed by this. Kids who will get killed by this. But yeah, no, it's just not acceptable. I don't even have really words to summarize how unacceptable this is. I know that I talk a bit about the illegitimacy of the current administration, right? I've talked about how the 14th Amendment is very clear. It's very straightforward. It's a list of offices and any other federal office, we may have forgotten. That you don't have to be a lawyer to read that and go, well, that is very obvious in what it means. But, it's kind of always been, you don't want to make too many waves. Even when something's wrong, you don't always want to make waves, right? Because making waves has a cost. It's why they've managed to get away with things as far as they have. Back in Marbury versus Madison, when the Supreme Court gave itself full, unsupervised authority to determine if law is constitutional, that was an overstep of power. But we don't really push back against it because, they're the courts. That is kind of their job. And they proceeded to rule mostly pretty conservatively. There are certain really rulings they should not have made. Cough, cough. There is no right the black man possesses that the white man must respect. No, don't do that shit. That's bullshit. No. But it was never really so egregious that you had to go, hey, we can't trust the rule of law in this country under your watch. But that's where we stand now. That's where we stand now. So we have a Supreme Court that has already started throwing away any sensible reading of the Constitution in order to justify extreme far-right bigotries and ideologies. That has gutted the power of the executive to fulfill the duties and obligations Congress puts upon them. And that's not great. We now have an executive that is disrespecting the congressional power of the purse, that is freezing funds that are meant to be spent, that have been properly appropriated by Congress. And now we look to Congress. And there is only one option Congress has at this point. Impeach and remove. It's not a matter of politics. It's not a matter of petty power. It's not a matter of Democrat or Republican. It's a matter of, this morning on the other stream that is not going to be unarchived because I ended up saying my full name and I'm not going to de-archive that. One of my irregular viewers, because I stream later in the day normally, from Germany, made the call that from the outside, the U.S. looks like Germany 1933. And I don't know if that's quite accurate. I'm pretty sure there's probably some differences going on, but it doesn't change the fact that we have a rise of something that can only, in truth and honesty, be called fascist. I don't think you can honestly describe a executive branch coming in and immediately freezing all outgrowth of money that has been properly apportioned and appropriated by Congress as anything other than totalitarian, which is one of the things you need for fascism. You can't look at something whose whole argument is shouting back to an imagined past and not say that they're, looking back to that past, that they're fantasizing that past. The second big thing you need for fascism. And you can't look at them going out of their way to scapegoat Mexicans, Muslims, and trans people without recognizing that third one. Like, these are fascists. I'm not going to say that every Republican's a fascist. As I mentioned, I met Don Bacon. Don Bacon, I do not agree with politically. I think that he is a coward. He is too far right, and he doesn't, properly respect his citizens. But, he's not a fascist. He can be a bit jingoistic at times. He can be a bit too afraid to stand up and go, actually, our minorities in our constituency have rights. Like, he's a coward, but he's not a fascist. I don't think Nancy Pelosi's a fascist. I don't think Joe Biden was a fascist. I don't even think that George Bush was a fascist. And, last time around, I'm like, Is Donald Trump a fascist? I don't know, but he's certainly got fascists around him. At this point, though, if it looks like a duck, if it walks like a duck, if it quacks like a duck, if it's got its friends throwing up the old Sig Heil at his inauguration like a duck, he's a fascist. That is who you got conned into electing. And don't worry, you're not the first people conned into electing a fascist. Okay? Mussolini may have done a revolution, but Adolf Hitler was elected. And, you know, so you're not the first people to fall for this. You know, it's happened to the Russians. It's happened to, I don't even know all the people across the world. It's happened in the Philippines. It happened in Brazil. Like, you're not the first, we are not the first people to elect a fascist. But that doesn't change the fact that we did. And Congress has a responsibility to go, whoa, this isn't allowable. So I do call upon all of my representatives in Congress and the Senate. I make no secret that I live in Baltimore, so that's Representative Mfume. Sorry for mispronouncing your name. I'm a white bitch. I don't say things right. It's a running gag. Senator Also Brooks, Senator Van Hollen. Please push forward with all of your might and urgency for the impeachment and removal of President Donald Trump. And then if J.D. Vance doesn't shape up and respect the balance of powers, do the same. Then if Speaker Johnson doesn't step up, I'm pretty sure by that point he'll step up, but keep doing it. And yeah, the right's going to throw out a impeachment after. They'll be like, well, if you impeach our guy, we'll impeach your guy. But they're doing that anyway. And I think that there are enough that moderate Republicans recognize this is not something that can be allowed. I think that there are probably more people like Don Bacon out there in the Republican Party right now who are basically cowards, who are willing to give fascist lip service and have assumed that that's what our dear President Trump was up to. And now they know better. Call for the impeachment. Don't let this drag on. He's already made it clear that he intends to do everything that he said on the campaign trail. And the endorsement of the mob is not itself grounds to completely strip the United States of its Constitution. I'm pretty sure no one has come around to watch me do my little rant, but I had to. There's no way I couldn't let this stand. And I am going to export, to keep it this one public, I am going to export it off. This is something I need to say. This needs to be said. This needs to be out there. Like, impeach him. Don't let this happen anymore. Don't play these games. This isn't a case of political disagreement. This is a actual case of a threat to the continued existence of the United States of America. Push for it. Impeach him. And if he does really intend to respond with violence, well, I have international viewers. I hope that my international viewers in Germany, in Sweden, in the United Kingdom, in Brazil, in the Philippines, in Japan. A lot of viewers in Japan. Like, they don't chat much, they don't come around much, but I get my demographic view info from YouTube. I know how many of you are from Japan. Um, Talk to your governments and go, hey, be ready to reign in the US. In one of the executive orders that we looked at this morning, the president talked about rogue states. I think we need to acknowledge that that the most rogue of the rogue states in the world right now is ours. Congress can get that in line. If Congress uses its powers of impeachment and removal against the president and against the members of the Supreme Court who are not legitimately put into power, the people who are there because a small minority of extreme far-right individuals blockaded and destroyed the standard process for appointing new judges until they could pick their people and push them through over any opposition. If we impeach them and we clean that up, we can get back. We can't go back. Let's be real. We crossed the Rubicon. We crossed the Rubicon a while ago. When exactly, people will argue. In my mind, it was when we started abducting Americans off of the street. Like, when we started separating families of people who came into this country legally, when we started throwing kids in cages. That's where I think we did it. But some, I'm sure, will disagree. But at this point, we've passed it for sure. We aren't going to go back to an old status quo, and that's fine. Time always ticks forward. The future is never the past. And just, it's going to be different. That doesn't mean that we need to allow some fascists to just ignore all of the law and order in this country. That doesn't mean that we need to allow an executive to ignore appropriations granted by Congress. That doesn't mean that we need to allow a Supreme Court whose only power is a power it granted itself, that was never granted to it by Congress or the people, is not granted to them by the Constitution. They took it upon themselves. We don't need to respect that power in all instances when they start gutting the ability of the executive to carry out the wills of the laws of Congress in a broad manner. Yeah. That's the extent. Is there anyone watching? Probably not. Yeah, I didn't think there were. It's 2 in the afternoon. It's too late for Europe. It's too early for the US. I wish I had a conclusion here beyond just impeach the dude. Do your damn jobs. I wish I had something more hopeful, because the fact of the matter is, I don't really believe that Congress will do their jobs. I think they're going to sit there and go, yes, we should, and then won't. I am still concerned that Senators Alsobrook and Van Hollen will just quietly vote no and then shrug their shoulders as things get worse and worse and say, well, we voted against it, when they have the power of the filibuster. When they have procedural issues, committee issues, when they can just make a raucous and tear it down. I am concerned that people like Don Bacon, who are sitting here looking at this, who know in their heart of hearts that this is not the conservatism they represent. I am afraid that they are going to remain cowards, and they're going to let fascists get away with it because they don't want to have to go back to a constituency that has bought into this stuff and say, you're backing Nazis. But you have to. I'm sorry, but if you really do truly believe in freedom, in liberty, you have to go back to your communities and say, hey, you got conned into supporting a fascist, and here's what we need to do to stop them. And I know that my words don't count for much. I am some tranny on the internet speaking over a little meme image of a goblin avatar that I made 2 years ago that I don't even have access to anymore. Well, it's on my to-do list to remake it, though. I miss having my little goblin avatar. But, my words are true anyway. Serious here. Let me turn this off. My words are true anyway. I don't care if the person listening to this goes and thinks of me as a man or a woman or whatever, or some freak. That doesn't matter. Okay? You might be rude. Okay, I care, but I don't really care. That's not relevant to what's going on right now. What's going on right now is that we have a basic rule of law. And the basic rule of law goes as thus. The legislature makes the law. The legislature allocates the funds. The executive executes the law and distributes as ordered the funds to the various departmental bureaucracies maintaining the government. The bureaucrats, that alleged horror story of the deep state, the bureaucrats that you need for a government to function. The bureaucrats do their jobs according to the procedures and the policies established by the executive under the instructions of the legislature. And then the courts sit beside that and monitor it for constitutionality, for corruption. That's how it's supposed to go. We haven't had strong enough checks against the courts at any point. I think it's been I've thought it has been a glaring issue my entire life, and this was when the courts were making rulings that supported me, right? I've said it before, I'll say it again. I as a teenager, I had to run from cops in Texas because I had a date with a cute Mexican boy in San Antonio before Lawrence v. Texas. That's something, that's a law, that's a court ruling good for me. Lawrence v. Texas, I actually think, was a very good and positive court ruling. Obergefell versus Hodge, which lets you, do the whole gay marriage thing. Yeah, pretty good ruling. And on the whole, I agree with both of them. But when Obergefell versus Hodge was coming out, I expressed a concern to the gay community that I was in, in that area, when they were pushing for it. And I got flack for it, but my concern was that if it wasn't backed up by explicit law, it didn't matter. It didn't matter that it was true, right? The right to marriage equality was enshrined in the Constitution at that point and is still. It doesn't require anything special. But all it would take, I feared, was a change in the justices for the bigots to come around and say, "Nuh-uh," and that it behooved us to write it down plain, to have our legislators write it down plain. I was called a killjoy and a spoilsport. And we did not write it down plain. They haven't overturned it yet, but they did overturn Roe v. Wade, and we all know, we've all heard the court say that Obergefell versus Hodge, Lawrence v. Texas, those are rulings they want to revisit. Rulings allowing same-sex marriage, and rulings banning the criminalization of same-sex relationships. And how far back do they go? Are they going to go try and put back dress law? I know we're getting into like trans stuff, but that is, in my heart. Hi, I like wearing my outfits. I like going out as I go out. I like being addressed by the local neighborhood toughs as Miss Barbara. I'm quite fond of these things, and I would rather they not become illegal. I don't think they will, but I know that there are that some of the same fascists pushing these things throughout, the same fascists that are pushing the increasing authoritarianism of the executive, who are pushing the overturning of legal protections through the Supreme Court, that are pushing the usurpation of congressional powers by the executive, while also gutting the bureaucracy. These are the same people who think that drag performances are inherently sexual. If you, dear viewer, don't know what a drag performance is, there's actually an excellent one that was put to film, very popular, called Mrs. Doubtfire. Stars Robin Williams. That's drag. And I know someone will be like, that's not what we mean, but that's drag. Mrs. Doubtfire is drag. And yeah, you can have a drag performance that focuses on the sexualization of women. Because that's what drag does. Drag takes and exaggerates the embodiment of womanhood to make, number one, a mockery of the expectations we have of women. Not a mockery of women, the mockery of the expectations. A mockery of the idea that masculinity is incompatible with those expectations. And generally just a broad social critique. And Miss Doubtfire does that. Miss Doubtfire is about a man who wants to take on a parenting role, the caring father who has to take on the woman's role in order to pull it off. It involves issues of, body format. There's a scene where the bus driver looks back in the window and sees Mrs. Doubtfire with her skirt hiked up and her legs all hairy and gets kind of wide-eyed before making a kind of gross sexual comment because, he's fine with women with hairy legs. Which, good on you. Women can have hairy wet legs if we want. But, it's all drag. And I think it's very important that be recognized. But these people want to classify that as porn. The current porn bans, that they're pushing, a lot of people are kind of on board of, oh, well, we don't want children to see porn. We don't want children to see obscenity. but they don't want to stop at porn. They want to reclassify. They already, as we just said, drag, they classify as porn. They classify, they would classify Mrs. Doubtfire in the most extreme as obscene. Probably not immediately. They would almost certainly not go out the gates with that. That's absurd. It's silliness. But, they might take something like Whipping Girl or Trans Rad Femme. They might take something like, you know, goodness gracious, what is it called? I have it on my phone. I can pull it up. Why am I don't know. I don't need to memorize it. Try and remember it. Flip this open. Who's texting me? Um, book. Book. It is. Is it in this book? I have so many different book apps, but I want to pull this example. I mean, we have plenty of examples here. We have Sovereign and Dreadnought by April Daniels. Those they would like to classify as porn. Let's see. We have Lord of the Last Heartbeat. Okay, that one is basically porn, but still, it's not nearly as wow as stuff I read when I was a kid. That I just grabbed off the supermarket shelf. Difference is that it's MXNB versus all the MXW there that I had when I was younger. Roller Girl, To Be a Girl, those are both like that. Well, I can't find the one I was looking for. It's like something like Trans 101. It's a little thing that's like, hi, what does it mean to be transgender? Do you think is your child transgender? Here's what you need to know. Like, and it isn't like there's no drawings of anything inappropriate. There's some frank discussion of anatomy, but it's mostly of the form, no, the doctor is not going to chop off your son's penis. Chill. Oh goodness, was that obscene? Did my words just mean obscene? I'm wandering away. I had a point. But yeah, my point is this. These are not your normal conservatives. These are not your standard people. They're not just people who want lower taxes and less government. They want a complete dissolution of the United States. They want one party rule, and that one party is not even the Republican Party. That one party is the most extreme far right. I don't think they're going to call themselves fascists or Nazis ever because no one has since them. Right? The fascists called themselves fascists, and then everyone else went, oh, yeah, no, we don't want to be called fascists. Not even the Nazis called themselves fascists. The Nazis called themselves socialists because socialism is popular. Not the word these days, but the actual thing. People like having control over their workplaces. They like having control over their labor. They like having public goods serve the people in the public. Parents like schools. They like schools that have community events. They like schools that have football and have little libraries, that have little fairs that you can go to and go bobbing for apples. Parents, people like roads. People like trains. Like there's a lot of arguing about trains these days, but let's face it, people like trains. I haven't met anyone who doesn't like hopping on a train, especially when it's not overcrowded. Like when they have enough trains running that you aren't overcrowded. People like it. People like the convenience of it. People like libraries. People like employment boards. People like Social Security and Medicaid. People like socialism. People don't like what they've been told socialism is. But that's a political question that can be argued, right? I want to be very clear. I am not saying that Congress needs to immediately impeach Donald Trump because I'm a socialist and he's a fascist, and that's a political argument. I am saying Congress needs to immediately impeach Donald Trump because Donald Trump is already ignoring Congress. Congress already passed these appropriations. The money that Donald Trump is refusing to spend has already been allocated. If he wants to go through and do his DEI bullshit in the background while fulfilling appropriations requirements, sure, go ahead. More power to ya. I don't like it, but I wouldn't immediately say, impeach him based on that. That's not, in and of itself, a violation of his oath of office. But this is. I feel like I've said the same thing over and over again, so I'm going to go ahead and stop after I say it one more time. Every member of Congress, Democrat or Republican, who believes in the Constitution of the United States, who believes that Congress and the people have the power of law, who believe authoritarian dictatorship is bad, has a responsibility to their people, to their morals, to their nation, and to God to immediately impeach and remove President Donald Trump. Rah.